Very good afternoon, Dravidian fraternity. We have with us Professor B. Ramakrishna Reddy garu, a doyen of linguistic research in Andhra Pradesh, and he was a professor of linguistics in Osmania University, and he was also founder registrar of this great Dravidian university. Welcome, sir. I am very happy to have with you, sir. And I would like to take interview with you, sir, on the basics of language and linguistics, sir. Yeah. First of all, for the benefit of all our students and faculty, I would like to ask you, how do you define a language, sir?
Language, generally from our perspective, it has its own internal structure, and internal structure meaning the sound, the meaning, and also it is the greatest communication channel. For example, there is what they call verbal communication and non-verbal communication. Language is the best example of the verbal communication and associated with facial expressions also, which you can call non-verbal communication. And language is the one which identifies people and also various regions in this country. For example, we talk about Maharashtra, which is based on the language Marathi. We call out Andhra Pradesh, which is based on the Telugu language or Andhra Bhasha. And similarly, so many states, for example, Odisha is nothing but, it is known as the Odia, and so also Bengali language. So language becomes a very important means of not only communication but the identity of the people. And we define language as a structure, a sort of self-centered structure which is used as a communication media among the people of the same language or across the languages, depending upon the knowledge of the addressee, whomever we are talking about. So language is not only confined for communication, but it also preserves our culture, our civilization, our way of life, our interpersonal relations, and so many other things related to human living.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Right.
In connection with this, your response, I would like to extend one more question, sir.
Yeah.
Does language changes its structure in course of time? Is it true?
Yes, yeah. Many languages, yes. There is always change.
Sir.
It is for various reasons. Number one, as the environment changes, we adapt various other things. And also in modern period, there is a lot of interaction of one language with other language. The native speakers of one language learn the other language, carry the features of their mother tongue to the other, number one. Number two, another channel of another channel which contributes for the language change is what we call the bilingual speaker. Some speakers, especially in India, there is illiterate bilingualism. People may not be able to read or write any language, but still they are able to speak both the languages. The people generally carry the words of one language to the other, the structure of one language to the other, and that's how language change is always a continuous process. It doesn't start somewhere and then stop. But for example, English language today has more than 2,000 vocabularies from Indian languages. And many of our people, many of us in India who are educated or who are literate, let me say, in English, we use a lot of English words in our Telugu, yes, in our daily communication. So this also leads to the language change, and a language change occurs in the way we pronounce, the way we make use of our words, and also in what we call this syntax, Vakya Nirmanam, yes, etc. In all these we can see, and the meaning of the words also changes depending upon the context. That's why there is change both in spoken word as well as in its meaning.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
You have been working on Dravidian languages for a long time, sir.
Yeah.
Almost 4 or 5 decades. And I would like to know what exactly is Dravidian? Is it just a language group or a cultural group? How do you differentiate or define Dravidian?
We generally understand it from the perspective of language structure. We are not experts to put it only at the culture ground. There are other people like archaeologists, anthropologists who look at the archaeological findings and anthropologists at the cultural things. But we look at the language, for example, the identity between words in a language, what we call the lexicon or dictionary type, and then we look at the grammatical form. For example, if you take pronouns, Sarvanamalu in Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, and so many other languages of you can see, for example, in Telugu for I will say Nenu. In Malayalam they will say Nan. In Tamil also Nan. In another language, for example in Manda, they call it Ane, Ine. For he, one language says Avan, another language Vadu, another language Inan, Anan, etc. So all these are related to one another. So we put them together and put them under what we call the Dravidian. In other words, language groups are based on their structure, vocabulary, and the meanings that they convey. So that's why we put them together as a group of Dravidian languages. Yeah.
Any layman knows about when you say Dravidian.
Yeah.
We only know about Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, or Tulu.
Yeah.
What are the other languages in this Dravidian group? Can you enlighten us?
Yeah, it's very interesting. You see, many people, for example, in Andhra Pradesh, still think Dravidian means Tamil Nadu.
Yes.
Tamil. They don't even take it for granted that languages like Malayalam, Kannada, Telugu also belong to the same group.
True.
And these 4 people, the so-called enlightened people, think these are Dravidian. They are right. But there are another 20 languages spoken right from South India up to Pakistan-Afghanistan border, which belong to this group. These include, for example, our Tudu, Kodagu, and various other languages. And in the central India, we have nearly half of our languages, nearly 13 of those languages belong to Dravidian. Languages like Konda, Kuyi, Kuvi, Pengo, Manda, Hindi, Ave, and so many other languages. And in the extreme north, almost beyond Uttar Pradesh, we have Kuduk and Malto. Another language called Brahmi is spoken in West Pakistan bordering with Afghanistan. So in other words, there are people like those who are interested in Indus Valley civilization. They feel that the Dravidians have migrated from the earlier period beyond Afghanistan and others, and they have come to India through the present West Pakistan and then up to the sea in the Bay of Bengal. And now many of the Dravidian speakers have gone or spread to Southeast Asia also. Not only South Asia, but Southeast Asia also. So Dravidian family is not confined to South India as most of the people think. It is beyond that, and Pakistan is one of the places where our languages are still spoken very actively.
Okay, sir. Do you think, is there any epicenter for the evolution of this Dravidian language family?
Epicenter, if you go back historically, we may think of, I'm not quite sure, we may think of Indus Valley civilization. That's number one. And then, as of today, if we take the number of languages, they are spread from the north to the south. There is a more number of languages in the central India. Though south also has a lot of them. So as a epicenter is difficult to say, but interaction has been always there. What we do, how do we define a language belongs to Dravidian alone? We compare their words to start with and their grammatical forms, like what we call vibhaktis, etc., and their structure, and with the structural similarities, we put them as into one group. Yeah. Just as in archaeology they do it, or in medicine, you can look for a DNA. Here we look for their structural similarities.
Yeah. Origin is a structure.
Origin, and also
that can be traced from structure.
From the structure we can reconstruct the origin also. We call it in historical linguistics. It is one type. It might have been so and so structure, and from that all the others have evolved. So that's one of the areas we study, and what we call historical comparative linguistics.
So next, I would like to ask you, what is the relation between a language and a script?
There is no inherent relation between language and script. Any language can be written in any script. For example, in linguistics, we use Roman script to all the languages, either Dravidian, Indo-Aryan, Austro-Asiatic, or Tibeto-Burman. Similarly, for example, in the entire Europe, they use Roman script only for all the 28 or 30 languages. Another thing, in India, there is close relationship in our script system. For example, what we call the consonants. In Telugu, we call them halulu. They are based on the Paniyan method of production of the languages from unknown to the known. Unknown is the what we call the center where we speak the throat for our purposes, and the well known is the lips. So we start with ka, ka, ga, ga, nya, cha, cha, ja, ja, nya, ta, ta, da, dha, na, pa, pa, ba, ba, ma. So this system is adapted in almost all the Indian languages, though even Tamil does it. Tamil has only two letters, ka and nya, ta and na, and pa and ma. But depend upon the context, pa is pronounced as ba also. For example, suppose you say tapam in Telugu, tapam, they will say tabam. So still, the system is the same. And unlike European writing systems, the Indian system is based on the consonant system on its production, the basis of its production. European, I don't know. For example, if they say A, B, C, D, alpha, beta, gamma, but I am not competent whether it is based on anything, I don't know.
In connection with this reflection, I would like to ask you, why only some languages develop script? Why some languages cannot develop script?
No, it is not that they cannot. Language basically is a medium of speech. Languages can exist without being written. For example, speaking and understanding is very much there throughout the world. Writing is specialized only in certain areas. For example, in India, now they say that our literacy rate is above 60. But even then, even if we accept it, there is 40% of people who are illiterate. But still, they use their language as competently as the so-called illiterate man. That's why I said there is no necessary for language to have script, and it so happens the speakers has adopted or created a sort of script. Scripts are of many types. For example, we in India, most of the scripts we write from left to right. But in Urdu, where they have adapted the script of Arabic, they write from right to left. Whereas in Chinese, they write from top to bottom.
Vertical.
Top to bottom. So it all depends upon the conventions that people have adapted and they have been using.
Sir, I want your reflection on Indian states getting formed on the basis of language. And my question is, Does a language unites people?
Definitely. Language not only unites, it gives identity, but languages unfortunately have become a source for conflict also.
Yes.
Many
sir.
places it has become conflict also. For example, the type of remarks people have been making right from the days of our independence regarding languages in India, that has created certain unacceptable comments and certain unscientific way of talking about languages. So, otherwise, language itself is not a source for any enmity. It is being used like culture. See, the one great thing in India is our multilingualism is part of our life. Whereas in other countries, it is not multilingual. For example, I told you about Europe.
Yes.
Within Europe, there are so many languages, so many cultures, and whereas here, you may speak another language, but culturally there are so many things. Things like our food habits, religious practices, and our way of life, and all these things contribute to our unity, what you can call the inclusiveness of India. Yeah.
Sir, I would like to ask you whether the contemporary India is facing the problem of language fanaticism, because recently we have seen how the ruling party at the helm of affairs in government of India wants to impose Hindi on non-Hindi speakers.
Yeah, you are right, and this is not the first time that the Hindi speakers or Hindi speaking community or Hindi scholars or the politicians wanted to impose Hindi on the basis on the speakers of other languages. It started as early as 1930s, even before independence, and in the 1960s it reached the climax when there was anti-Hindi agitation in Tamil Nadu, and that has spread to other parts of India also. And for example, Hindi is not even a separate unitary language. It has nearly 48 or 50 dialects, and these dialects are spoken right from western Rajasthan up to eastern UP. There was a very well-known linguist from America who has worked on the internal communication of these people and their comprehension. For example, one dialect speaker to the other speaker. And the Hindi of Rajasthani speakers, they were able to understand the so-called standard Hindi only to certain percentage. And the percentage up to UP, it either increased or decreased. In other words, it is a conglomeration of many dialects, and that's why it has become a larger thing. And you refer to the political people want to make use of. Unfortunately, the large percentage of illiteracy in northern India. Among the Hindi speakers, the literacy is the lowest. And unfortunately, Uttar Pradesh tops in this. It is on the top. And I'm saying unfortunately because most of our prime ministers, not all of them, hail from Uttar Pradesh. If you look after independence, mostly. But you know, very rarely it contributed to the development of that region. Even today, the illiteracy is more, and the illiterate people, unfortunately, are exploited for political gain through franchise, franchise, etc. Otherwise, Hindi is not the same. For example, if you look at the modern languages, Tamil has got the ancient, oldest literature among the existing languages. Of course, Sanskrit also had, but Sanskrit is no longer a spoken language like Tamil or Marathi or Hindi or other languages. So, in other words, this imposition of Hindi on other areas, it is not acceptable. By the way, my footnote is I have an MA in Hindi,
Yeah.
but it doesn't change my
Okay.
attitude towards the language policy is different.
Sir.
And that's why India could not, you see, there was a movement, the so-called national language they wanted to say.
National language
In
policy.
this,
They
and
wanted
then,
to bring it. Yeah.
Then people were very abrupt, very correctly
Sir.
said there is nothing like national language. There are national languages in India.
Yes. Plural.
There are so many languages which can be termed as national languages, so we can't say. That's why then it was replaced by official language,
Yeah.
and then the so-called three-language formula was introduced, and that is optional. For example,
Yeah.
Tamil Nadu doesn't practice it. It is up to them. Yeah.
Sir, since you have mentioned about dialects
Yeah.
in Hindi,
Yeah.
I would like to come back to basics. How a dialect is evolved?
Yeah.
Does a dialect leads to separatism?
No, it doesn't lead to separatism.
What is the evolution of a dialect, sir?
A dialect has certain vocabularies very peculiar to that place,
Okay, sir.
to that area, to that group of people. And another dialect, you see, for example, dialects get words not only from their region,
Yeah.
but also the profession, main profession in that area,
Okay.
the interaction between people and various other things. For example, our own language, Telugu,
Yeah.
has 3 or 4 dialects.
Yes, sir.
For example, the eastern dialect comprising Visakhapatnam, Visakhanagar, and Srikakulam, and then the coastal dialects comprising east and west Godavari, and then up to Nellore, more or less. Nellore is sometimes treated with Rayalaseema, and then Rayalaseema dialects,
Yeah.
our like Chittur, Kadapa,
Kurnool.
Kurnool, and
Anantapuram. Yeah.
So here each one has number 1 the vocabulary difference,
Yeah.
number 2 sometimes in grammar, but mostly in the lexical items, words.
Okay.
Words, we use one word, other people. For example, as a child
Sir.
from illiterate family, for the word father, I used to use Ayya.
Yeah.
Afterwards, when I went to school, I learnt Nayana.
Mm.
And then somebody said it is not Nayana,
Nana.
Nana.
Yeah.
And finally, Nanagaru.
Nanagar.
But all,
refinement.
so what I meant was, the so-called standard dialect is always taken as a model,
Yeah.
and you are taught those things in the school.
Okay.
Otherwise, for example, in Nellore, they call it Appa,
Appa.
Abba.
Abba.
So these are all dialects, and dialects evolve in their own way. And I am very happy dialects are well retained by the illiterates.
Yes, sir.
This is our property.
Yeah.
So dialect is nothing but a variety of the language spoken by less number of people, and its spread is limited when compared to the so-called standard language. Yeah.
Sir, does it lead to some kind of animosity or separatism, this dialects?
See, people can make use of very normal things and positive things also into animosity.
Yes, sir.
Otherwise, there is nothing like that.
Okay.
There is nothing like that.
Sir.
Yeah. See, in India, there are language prejudices also.
Yes, sir.
People can use, the Telugu people generally
Use and
some
misuse of language.
misuse
Yeah.
language to refer to other groups. Other groups. For example, regarding Tamilians, some of our people use derogatory
Yes.
terms. Similarly, Tamilians will use for other groups.
Yeah.
That we have to take in a lighter way. It is not very serious thing. Yeah.
Sir, I would like to ask you very serious question about the endangerment of language. What exactly is endangerment of language? How to preserve
Yeah.
the extinct about to be extinct languages?
Yeah. See, endangerment is starts
Sir,
when the language is not used
sir.
by in the all spheres of human activity
Okay.
or the group of activities. Number 1. Number 2, in some places, the earlier language is spoken only by older people
Yeah.
who are 50 or above, and the younger people take to the local standard language,
Sir.
or sometimes what you can call the prestigious
Prestigious.
language. So that leads to endangerment.
Sir.
Another thing is, the written literature is not available in many of these languages. They are purely spoken.
Literature is not available.
Literature is not there, written literature or whatever it is. That's why the government of India, through the HRD, Human Resource Development, has started this program called Preserving and Protecting and Preserving Endangered Languages. What we call SPPEL, Scheme for Protection and Preservation of Endangered Languages. And in India, there are nearly 250 or 300 languages, out of which almost 80% are endangered, except these major languages. You see, constitution.
Popular languages, sir.
There is another injustice done to these languages in India by the Constitution of India. In the Constitution, as of today, there are 22 languages recognized by the government.
Official language.
Official languages.
Yes, sir.
And there are another nearly more than 100 languages which are spoken by more than 10,000 speakers as their mother tongue. Those are also listed. So both together, there are only 122 or 25 languages. The rest of the another 320 languages are never even mentioned, which are spoken by less than 10,000 speakers.
So
it is one type of injustice.
Really.
And the scholars involved with the language, especially the linguistics groups, scholars in we have been writing to the government of India to release the names of all these people, all the names of all the languages and the number of speakers, but they give only a couple of them as primitive languages and don't give. Let me tell you, the census of India, if I am right, started during the British period from maybe 1891 or
1911, sir.
1911.
First census is 1911.
Okay. And they, up to 1971, all the number of speakers even for a language. For example, I saw the 1961 census of Hyderabad. In that, they have mentioned names of 4 speakers who spoke one of the Austroasiatic languages.
Only 4 speakers?
4 number.
4 number.
2 male, 2 female. Whereas from 71 onwards, somehow they have given up mentioning any language spoken by less than 10,000.
That means it is extinct, sir?
No, it is still there. But the fellows, they don't want to mention. What is the reason? Nobody explains. We asked many government officials also, they don't know, and we are fighting against it. But nothing has come out. See, for us, just as in the morning our friends were saying, even if a language is spoken by a dozen people, that is important because it preserves its structure, it preserves its culture, its civilization, its way of life, its value, human values. Human values. You see, for example, I have noticed among the so-called tribal communities, the interpersonal human relations are much deeper than the so-called civilized people.
Exactly.
So, I'm talking from my experience. Right. So, suppose I offer something to a tribal man in a community to eat, he will share with the rest of the folks. He won't eat on his own. So, that sort of community identity, coherence is very much there. So that's why all these are worth studying, and the so-called endangered languages. Endangered language means endangered culture, endangered way of life, endangered food habits, endangered community as a whole. So that's why it is good that we are trying to retain them, but people should come out and the census of India should come out and mention the languages spoken by less than 10,000 also.
Sir. So, do you believe in marginalization of language?
It is not only
we are marginalizing some languages purposefully.
More or less.
Political policy is like that.
Right. That's very unfortunate. I don't know why it started in 1971.
Sir, another important aspect I would like to know from you, sir, that is, what is the relevance of Dravidian languages in the age of globalization and what are the changes that have taken place in the age of internet in Dravidian language structure?
The language structures have not changed much.
Okay.
The structures remain the same.
Okay.
But lot of vocabulary from modern technology, for example, internet and also various other things, that those vocabularies have entered,
Sir.
and our people have been making best use of it for technical use of our language by analyzing it with the technical available equipment or technicality rather than being in the same old way. Now, for example, there are such devices that you can speak in a phone, and then you can get the translation of that word from one language to another. That sort of technology, it develops for the language, and since I was talking about these so-called what phone is this? Smartphone or whatever it is, that has spoiled children from learning the languages properly. They are more tuned to the pictures, etc., rather than the language. So, like many things, there is always positive as well as negative aspect for everything. So that's what I feel. But technology has been very much used by these 4 major Dravidian languages, and we may extend it to other languages, but it depends upon their literacy and various other factors.
Okay, Professor, how do you see the future of Dravidian languages?
Dravidian languages will survive in spite of the so-called endangerment. Especially there is no problem for say 8 or 10 languages. For example, among the Dravidian tribal languages, Gondi is spoken by the largest number.
Okay.
It is spoken across 5 states: Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Orissa, Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh. Okay? And that is Gondi. And among the so-called tribal languages in India, Gondi comes in the second place. First place is Bhili, whose name is found even in Mahabharata, Ramayana, Billulu. And that has the largest number. Next to that is Gondi, one of the Dravidian languages spoken in central India. So Dravidian languages will definitely survive, and many of these languages, and there is a small attempt by the government of India through language scholars to record them and preserve them for future. I will tell you, for example, what is the language of those who settled in central India, this thing is Sri Kumar. I will tell you. They have retained their language, reconstructed from the earlier works, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name. Don't record it.
Okay, it's okay, sir. Sir, let us continue. The other question is, being a student of history and teacher of history, I would like your reflection on historical linguistics. What is the relevance? What is the technique of historical linguistics? And is there any chance or is there any scope of historical linguistics for reconstruction of history?
Reconstruction of history depends upon the interpretation of the historians. As far as the students of linguistics are concerned, historical linguistics helps us about our ancient forms and how a particular form has evolved from the earlier form. For example, evolution of the languages. That's number 1. Number 2, interconnection between languages. For example, Tamil and Malayalam are related to each other much closer than Tamil and Kannada. Kannada and Telugu at the vocabulary level are much closer to one another than Telugu and Malayalam. So this sort of thing, number 1. Number 2, it will help us to reconstruct the ancient history of the people also. What was their food diet? What were their food habits? What were the type of weapons they were using? Okay? And what was their way of life? What was their profession? All these things we can find and we reconstruct on the basis of the available material. And we compare one language with the other. That is one of the things in historical linguistics. And we learn certain things from history, and whatever is of any worth, historians can take from the work of the linguists also.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Being a founder of this Dravidian University, I would like to know from you, what are the future prospects of the students of Dravidian languages in this university? What are the career prospects or career advantages of knowing this or learning these Dravidian languages?
First of all, I would like to submit to you, I am not the founder of Dravidian University.
Founder registrar, sir.
Founder registrar is Founder was Professor V.I. Subramaniam.
Founder registrar, I am.
Right. And it is because of the efforts of Professor V.I. Subramaniam and with his group of people that we could get the Dravidian University, and that too in Kuppam. Other people wanted, they showed different places almost in all the 4 states. Jayalalitha wanted it in Tamil Nadu, and our ministers, Janardhan Reddy, our 2 or 3 ministers, they wanted in their respective districts.
Nellore
and Karnataka wanted it at Harvard. So everybody, but we always were interested in Kuppam because it is a trilingual place, number 1. And people are there who speak 3 languages, though they are not literate. They are not literate.
Being illiterate, they speak spontaneously.
And this is an ideal place for establishing a university. And also, it is as all of us know, combining place of Tamil Nadu, Andhra. It is in part of Andhra. Earlier it was in Mysore.
Yes, sir.
Long ago.
State of Mysore.
State of Mysore. When I first came here in the 1990s, I saw a boat, Mysore.
Yes.
Not the Mysore State.
Mysore State.
Probably it was part of it. So now it is part of Andhra Pradesh. So Dravidian University as on today, it has developed into a very excellent university with so many faculties.
Yes, sir.
When we started, we had only 2 or 3 departments, and slowly the university has expanded. It has so many things. And regarding the job opportunities that you said, our students are in no way better or inferior to anybody. They are not less than anybody else regarding the jobs. It depends upon their effort, their learning, their contribution. You see, for example, as you know, as a teacher, now there is more crazy for technology, medicine. Very few people would like to go for social sciences and humanities. And we started with humanities and social sciences. Now slowly the Dravidian University is taking up technology also.
Other disciplines.
So let us hope there will be a better future. As far as the social sciences and humanities, our students are as lucky as the other people. That's all.
So finally, sir, I would like to know, how do you see the relevance of Dravidian University in South India?
It will be the center for Dravidian studies, especially its ancient history onwards. We should have, in fact, there should be an anthropology department. As you know, there is both physical anthropology and cultural anthropology. We should work on both of them so that our communities as a whole, we can reconstruct our cultural norms also, the common cultural way of life. And that's number 1. Number 2, it will be in future, it will be a center for Dravidian studies in general. Not only languages, but also history, culture, way of life, our food habits, our internal personal relations, and our impact on the world about Dravidian. At least I hope and expect this institute will grow as one of the best centers in the Indian subcontinent.
Okay, sir, I am really enlightened. and you have been very resourceful.
No, no.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Right.